What's up guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. Today I've got another Skyrim Remastered build to share with you, complete with a reimagined backstory, more in-depth role-playing, enhanced perk choices, and a versatile playstyle. This is the Dragon Priest. It's the 201st year of the 4th era in Skyrim. The dragons have resurfaced, the undead dragon priests loom in their tombs, and one man aims to destroy them all, becoming the strongest dragon who ever lived. The Dragon Priest seeks out the most perilous crypts and dragon burial mounds, collecting masks and artifacts, and terminating anything that tries to intervene. A childhood obsession for dragon cultists has manifested in this priest, and now, wearing the ancient mask Konare, wielding a dragon-bone sword and blasting torrents of flame from his hand, the Dragon Priest intends to be the only dragon left in the land. Before we get into the build, don't forget that you can move through the video at your leisure by following the timestamps in the description. But with that said, let's get right into the Dragon Priest's race, standing stone, and stats. The Dragon Priest is a Nord, and thanks to his northern blood, he has a 50% resistance to frost. He can also use his battle cry to send targets fleeing for 30 seconds once per day. Also, as a Nord, he has an innate bonus of +5 to one-handed and smithing. As for standing stones, use the Lover Stone early on, as the Dragon Priest has a solid mix of mage and warrior skills, but after that, try going for something a little more unique. You may think I'm crazy, but the standing stone I'm going to suggest for the final build is the Atronach Stone. In all seriousness though, this priest plods about in robes that offer about as much protection as a common dressing gown, so the defensive bonuses and magicka boost offered by this stone is just too good to pass up. 50% spell absorption and 50 points of base magicka in exchange for minus 50% magicka regen? Yes please. The Dragon Priest's stat spread will be 50% health to add a little bonus on top of alteration, restoration and other magical protection, and then 50% magicka to keep you pumping out destruction spells until the battlefield looks more like a crematorium, and to keep your last resort restoration and alteration spells at the ready. The Dragon Priest hailed from Falkreath. I know what you're thinking, surely he comes from somewhere more exotic, maybe even Akavir, where legends of the dragons were as real as the ground they walked on. But no, the Dragon Priest was a Nord of humble beginnings. He was a regular child, living in a regular household with regular parents. One thing set his family apart from the rest, however, and that was his father. His father made a living as an adventurer of sorts. He would travel to ancient ruins and dead men's tombs in order to sneak small trinkets out without rousing any unwanted attention from the dead occupants. He would go out once a week, and he would always return with ancient coins, pots and trinkets to sell to the wealthier merchants who passed through the town. If he was particularly enamored by an item, he would hike a few days to take it to the markets in Whiterun or Solitude. Anyway, as you can imagine, the young Dragon Priest, like most children, had his head in the clouds. Falkreath was too tranquil, too civil for his liking, but he was far too young to venture off on his own. On his 10th birthday, his father gifted him a book called Kolb and the Dragon, a choose-your-own-adventure book. Even though he was too young to leave Falkreath, he got lost in the pages of this book, trying countless times to find his way to the dragon in order to slay it. He always fell at the last hurdle, when he was certain he'd defeated the mighty dragon, plaguing Kolb's village. His father's gift had unleashed a curiosity as big as an ocean, and the young Dragon Priest begged his father to bring him new books about dragons whenever he went to the markets. Soon, books simply couldn't satiate his fascination. He asked his father every week to take him on journeys to the ancient Nordic ruins, but his father was hesitant, knowing full well the dangers that lurked in those age-old crypts. The Dragon Priest noted that his father never left the house without a sword slung across his back, so while he was away, the Dragon Priest took note from one of his dragon books. He made himself a flimsy Dragon Priest mask from wood he plucked from Falkreath's mill and began practicing with a wooden sword. When he wore the makeshift mask, he felt invulnerable. He felt like he could channel the might of dragons. One day, when his father was feeling particularly pleased from a successful and safe trip, he decided that he would treat his son to a visit to an ancient Nordic ruin, one he had been to recently. As long as the Dragon Priest didn't go wandering off on his own, he'd be as safe as can be. They left Falkreath the next morning and set their sights on the mountains. Aside from a close encounter with a bear, forcing them to leave the road temporarily to hide among the trees, their journey was trouble-free. As they approached the old barrow, nestled in the mountainside, the priest felt a wave of intangible power hit him. The air was different here. Every gust of wind felt like a warning. Following in his father's footsteps, they entered the ruins. Inside, the violent snows and harsh winds gave way to a hollow stillness. The antechamber looked as though it was built thousands of years ago, and when he breathed in, the air tasted different. The giant room smelled like the underside of an overturned stone, disturbed from its resting position deep in the soil. The earthy aroma contained for 100 lifetimes. The dragon priest would have been afraid, but his father strode confidently through the antechamber, unabashed by the loud echo of his boots on the flagstones. He sucked in a breath and tried to keep pace. The young priest made a point of stepping exactly within his father's footfalls, as if landing outside of them would activate some antique trap. After a few minutes, the dragon priest regained his enthusiasm. Here he was, inside an ancient crypt. The World Eater himself could have walked through these rooms for all he knew. As they delved deeper into the tomb, the air grew staler still, and they stopped for a moment in a burial chamber. His father rested a hand on his shoulder, and they listened. The walls were covered in human-sized holes, and in each rested the body of an ancient Nord. The dragon priest found himself diverting his eyes from their forms, trying not to show his trepidation. If his father sensed his fear, he'd never bring him on another adventure. His thought process was cut short by the creak and clack of dry limbs stirring. The corpses were moving. Draugr! He thought they only existed in the storybooks. As they crawled out of their hollows, their dead eyes lit up, identifying them with a cold blue gaze. The dragon priest's father drew his sword and told him to hide. "Go!" his father shouted, and he ran. He followed a narrow passageway, which opened up to a dark crypt. He plucked a candle off of the wall, lit it, and closed the heavy door behind him. If the antechamber had looked 1,000 years old, this room deep down in the ruins was twice as old. The dark crypt seemed to have outlived even cobwebs, for aside from a fine layer of dust which clung to every surface, the crypt looked preserved. The dragon priest could sense magic in the room, something drawing him further in, as if he was strolling carelessly into the maw of a dragon. The dragon priest rested the candle at the far end of the room beneath a wall, and then he stood back, awestruck by what the candle had illuminated. There were intricate carvings decorating the entire wall. The scene in the center depicted a colossal dragon, which towered over a row of cultists. Each of them stood facing the young dragon priest, staring through their masks. Instinctively, as if being beckoned by the figures on the wall, the young dragon priest reached into his bag and removed his modestly crafted mask. He lifted it slowly to his head and then pressed it to his face. A hand gripped him by the shoulder. The dragon priest spun in panic and tumbled backwards into the wall. Above stood his father, reaching for his hand. He had fought off the Draugr, and then it was of paramount importance that they returned home immediately. Were his mother to find out where his father had taken him, her wrath would have vastly outmatched the Draugr. From that day on, the dragon priest was changed. His mind was full of wonder, and he believed himself to be a member of the dragon cult. He wanted to become a dragon, and the greatest one the world would ever see. When he was of an age to care for himself, he set off on an expedition into the southern mountains to find more information of the ancient dragons. But before he found any tombs, he stumbled upon a skirmish between Imperial soldiers and Stormcloaks. The dragon priest was captured along with the Stormcloaks and taken to Helgen. After escaping Helgen, the dragon priest felt enlightened. He was right all along. His existence was far too significant to be snuffed out on a chopping block unjustly. Alduin, the World Eater, himself had appeared in the flesh, and the dragon priest was convinced this was no coincidence. It was instead a challenge. When he discovers his prophetic fate after killing the first dragon, this belief is reaffirmed to him, and he knows with all certainty now that he will become the most powerful dragon to ever live. Even if he appears in human form, he will reap the dragons of their powers and absorb their essences to make himself stronger, until the day comes when he can challenge the one who saved him. He won't stop at dragons. In order to become the best, he will need to hunt down all of the world's dragon priests, waking them from their resting places and taking the masks from their corpses. And that applies to Marak too. His primary motivation in Skyrim, therefore, will be to collect as many dragon masks and dragon artifacts as possible, while slaying everything that can contribute to his growth. As for factions, you probably gathered from the roleplaying that the Dragon Priest will definitely be following the main storyline and continuing this into the Dragonborn DLC. Another questline that fits the Dragon Priest is the College of Winterhold. As a human channeling the powers of the dragons, he will need a strong understanding of magic, so what better place to go? Lastly, he will also do the Dawnguard DLC to extinguish the vampire threat. So, with the Dragon Priest's backstory, roleplaying and factions out of the way, let's now take a look at how they'll determine his skills, spells, perks, and his overall playstyle. The main skills for this build will be one-handed, destruction, alteration, restoration, smithing, and enchanting. He'll be using 3 different schools of magic, so there are a lot of options here, but these are the spells we recommend. Fireball, or possibly Incinerate if that's more to your taste, will be the main damage dealer. He may not be breathing it out of his mouth, but the Dragon Priest's Palm Fire will be strong enough to rival any real dragons. Then Close Wounds and other similar restoration spells focused on the caster, and finally Dragonhide and Ebony Flesh for some very important armor rating. The former costs significantly more to use, but offers insane damage reduction and obviously fits the role-playing perfectly. Don't shy away from using any other alteration spells you fancy, whether for fun or for utility, but the ones mentioned will be the ones to go to in combat. Another quick thing to mention is that you'll also have a massive variety of shouts, and due to the fact that they're all dragon shouts, they'll all fit the role-playing and can be used to freshen up your combat style however you see fit. However, dragon aspect is very important and should be used as often as possible before getting into fights. Now that you've got the list of relevant spells, let's get into the essential perks. The first skill we have is one-handed. Of all the things to develop a fascination for, dragon cults are one of the most dangerous choices for a young explorer, and in order to visit the crypts in the mountains of Skyrim, the Dragon Priest needed to know how to swing a sword. Since then, he's always kept a sword in his right hand, whether it be fighting off Draugr or burying it to the hilt in the neck of a dragon. From this skill tree, take the middle branch up to Savage Strike, with all 5 ranks of Armsman increasing your overall one-handed damage, and Savage Strike adding a 25% damage bonus to standing power attacks. These perks are all you need to be a beast with the Dragonbone sword. You can't seriously call yourself the mightiest dragon in Tamriel if you can't scorch your skeptics to a crisp, and the Dragon Priest is quite aware of this. For that reason, destruction magic, specifically fire-based destruction spells, are his main damage dealers. From the destruction skill tree, we suggest taking the left branch up to Intense Flames, and then the 4th branch up to Expert Destruction. Expert Destruction is pretty clear. This branch will give you much better magicka cost for all of the spells you use. The real standouts are Augmented Flames and Intense Flames, due to the Dragon Priest's total investment to fire-based spells. With Augmented Flames, fire spells do 50% more damage, and with Intense Flames, fire damage will send low health enemies packing. As a man with an arguably unhealthy obsession with dragons, the Dragon Priest is always going to look the part. That means cultist robes. And one problem with robes is that they aren't the best at keeping arrows and swords away from the wearer. Even the most poorly kept sword in the hand of some incompetent bandit will slice through effortlessly. The Dragon Priest makes up for this with alteration magic, using the power of Dragonhide to make his skin as sturdy as stone. From the alteration skill tree, you'll want to take the main branch all the way up to Master Alteration, and then grab all ranks of magic resistance, as well as stability and Atron Arc. Dragonhide is a master level spell, so it's pretty much essential to take the Master Alteration perk unless you want to drain all of your magicka on one spell. Stability works really well with the Dragonhide spell too, as it increases the duration of alteration spells. For the same reason we mentioned about the Dragon Priest's fancy robes, Restoration is another skill that'll be the difference between life and death in combat. From this skill tree, go for the 1st and 2nd branches, the 4th branch up to Adept Restoration, and then the 5th branch up to Recovery. Respite is a great pick for builds like the Dragon Priest, who rely on stamina just as much as magicka. Casting spells all day is all well and good, but his right hand will always be swinging a sword, power attacking anyone within range. So Respite's effect, which heals stamina as well as health, is pretty top. That brings us on to our out of combat skills, the first of which being smithing. Only your sword and mask can be smithed up, but even still, a 6 perk point investment here is well worth it for the benefits. Take the left side all the way up to dragon smithing and then grab Arcane Blacksmith to make sure you can keep smithing your enchanted gear. And then we have enchanting. Take Fire Enchanter and then take the middle branch up to extra effect. As for gear, the Dragon Priest will be kitted out in cultist robes, gloves and boots. Top this off with the Konaric Dragon Priest mask, which firstly looks badass, but also, when health is low, it has a chance to heal the wearer and damage nearby enemies. And then get yourself a Dragonbone sword, because you know, you gotta do something with all those dragon bones you collect. There's something particularly cruel and sadistic about killing a dragon with the body parts of one of its friends. Be sure to smith up the sword and the mask. As for enchantments, on the sword go for fire damage and fiery soul trap, and on the apparel use enchantments like Fortify One-Handed, Fortify Destruction, and Fortify Alteration. The best way to figure out how you want to prioritize these enchantments is in the field. If you find yourself lacking in one area, put that enchantment on as much gear as possible. There you have it guys, subscribe to FudgeMuppet for more Skyrim Remastered builds and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to scroll on down to the description so you can follow us on Twitter, and then cast your votes either in the comments or on Twitter for which build we remaster next. Thank you so much for watching, I'm Drew, and I look forward to nerding out with you again in the next video.